And then I just wanted to say that if you have questions during the talk, please post them to the meeting chat. And then if you have questions afterwards, send them to tech@ojairetreat.com. And the next talk will be next Friday at 7:30, and I think Prasad is going to be doing the co-hosting. So I'm not sure if I'll be here, but Prasad will be. So, but I hope to be. So, all right. Thank you.
Jonathan, put that email you mentioned in the chat.
In the chat,
so that
okay.
people can read it. Yeah, otherwise difficult to remember.
Okay. Okay. Put it there now. And then there'll also be a recording that will be sent out to participants afterwards too. So if you want to watch this one again or the first two talks, you'll also get a link to those.
Jonathan, I'll start whenever you give me the signal.
Okay, I think you're ready. I think we can go.
Okay. So today's topic is Krishnamurti approach to education. Krishnaji's approach to education is intimately linked with his teachings. So I'll first introduce a few items of his teachings which are relevant for his vision of education. He pointed out that our society is the way it is because we are the way we are. That there is an intimate connection between the state of our society and the state of our consciousness as human beings. That whenever there is disorder in consciousness, it projects itself into our relationships. And millions of such relationships constitute what we call society. So if there is violence in our discrimination or prejudice and so on, then it is there in society. So society cannot become peaceful unless the individuals are peaceful. You can make external changes, and governments are all the time trying to do that. Better aeroplanes, better cars, better roads. But it doesn't end the violence. There have been different ideologies, there have been different religions, but none of them has succeeded in changing man. And therefore, in all of them, people who are affiliating themselves to that ideology or that religion, there is still anger, jealousy, violence, division, and so on. So unless there is a transformation in human consciousness, a major transformation, a totally different approach to life, so long as each one of us is approaching life in a self-centered way, which is what we mean by the ego, then all this disorder is inevitable. You may contain the disorder in certain directions, but it will burst out in other directions. So education must concern itself with the transformation of consciousness. At present, it is not doing that. That is not the aim of education. At present, it is trying to, in each country, develop citizens who will fit into that society. So there is this famous saying of Krishnamurti that being well adjusted to a sick society is no sign of health. All our problems originate from our psyche. And our present day education doesn't deal with the psyche at all. It deals only with external things. It deals with educating the child about the external world, the history, the geography, the science. Everything is concentrated about the external world. There is no effort to understand oneself. And that understanding is not something you can get just from the book. Otherwise, you can read the psychology book and you can know how your psyche operates. That's not false, but it does not transform your psyche. It becomes an intellectual knowledge held like mental property in the brain. And you can give lectures on it, but it does not transform you. Similarly, you can study Buddhist philosophy, all the truths that the Buddha has mentioned, and you may become even a professor of Buddhist philosophy, but the professor of Buddhist philosophy is not the Buddha, because he has not seen the truths that Buddha has talked about. He is only repeating what the Buddha has mentioned and probably giving arguments in favor of it and so on. That does not transform consciousness. So he talked about the need for self-knowledge, that human beings need self-knowledge, that self-knowledge is the key to wisdom. And without wisdom, if you are only imparting knowledge, you are empowering the individual without giving him an understanding what is the right use of that power and what is the wrong use of that power. And all disorder in society as well as in our personal life and in our consciousness arises from this ego process, which is not there in nature. It's a creation of human beings in their consciousness through the way they think and imagine. So unless one learns to approach life in a completely different way, you cannot expect a major change in society. So whether it's a communist society or socialist society or a religious society or a scientific society, in all of them we have war, in all of them we have all the problems able to be peaceful. And unless people are peaceful, society cannot be peaceful. So he said, you are the world. There is a glaring example of that in what he said about Gandhiji's murder. In 1948, January 30th, Gandhi was murdered by a killing with bullets. And those bullets were produced by a man called Godse. At that time, in 1948, January, Krishnaji was giving talks in Bombay. And someone asked him at the end of the talk, sir, who was responsible for the murder of Gandhi. And he said, each one of you who is divided from his fellow man on the basis of religion, on the basis of caste, on the basis of nationality, is responsible for that murder. But we think it was Godse who was responsible, or some conspirators who were responsible. And the law punished those people, got hold of those people and punished them. But if you examine a little deeper, was Godse born a murderer? No. He was just like any other child. He grew up in this society, learned from his environment, received all kinds of propaganda and prejudices from society, and began to hate Muslims, and he felt Gandhi was favoring the Muslims and so on. So he went and killed Gandhi. Now, who is responsible for that child named Godse becoming a murderer? The whole society is responsible. All you and me are all responsible. We have created a society like that in which there is this division between religions, between linguistic communities, between states, between nations, and so on, with patriotism and all that. So all that propaganda catches hold of the child, teaches him to hate, to identify himself with his particular religion, his particular caste, his particular country, and so on, which creates the ego. So the ego comes from this identification with a fragment. Instead of feeling for the whole, you feel only for the fragment. You feel one with the fragment, and your entire focus is on the security of the me and the mind, the progress of the me and the mind, the prosperity of the me and the mind. And that is the egoistic approach, that you are not concerned with the whole, you are only concerned with your own people. And how does the mind define who are my people and who are other people? So it's a deep psychological problem. You can see that right now in operation Arabs in Israel and Palestine. 40 Israelis were kidnapped and are in the custody of Hamas. For them, the Israelis feel very strongly. They want them to be liberated and so on. But 1 million people in Gaza are being starved and destroyed, and they don't feel that way towards them because they are not our people, they are others. So how does this mind create this feeling of our people and other people? How does it draw that line? That's a psychological line. It's not actual. Krishna said the other man is yourself. The truth is that you don't see him that way because you measure people by their identification, by their affiliation, and so on. Otherwise, in body and in consciousness, we are identical, whether you are in China or in Russia or anywhere else. But the mind is caught in propaganda. Different propaganda, which we call conditioning, and therefore it's necessary to free oneself from conditioning and come upon a global mind which feels for the whole of the earth and all the people, not only for my people and so on. And therefore he wanted to change education because he said, at present we are bringing up children to fit into society. They must be taught to question society, to inquire deeply into what is true and what is false. So the need for self-knowledge, which is wisdom, which is the source of wisdom, is apparent. But our education mostly doesn't concern itself with self-knowledge. It only considers itself with knowledge of the world. It's a way of functioning efficiently in the world to make a living. That's the concern of education. So if we ask the principal of a school or vice chancellor of a university, what is your aim in education? What kind of human being are you aiming to create? They'll say we want to create an efficient worker, a hardworking man, an intelligent person, an expert in his field, and possibly a leader of human beings. I put it to you that all these qualities were present in Adolf Hitler, whom many consider to be the most evil person of the 20th century. He was efficient. He was an expert in his field. He was a leader of men and rose to the top. The only thing he was lacking is love and compassion. So, what is there in present day education to ensure that our students will grow up with love and compassion, which means with sensitivity? Without sensitivity, without feeling for other people, for nature, for other forms of life, for other species, for the earth, man becomes self-centered and works only for his own benefit, profit, and so on, which is the egoistic approach. And so long as we promote that through education, we are creating wars. Just consider that. Wars are not the creation of the ignorant villager in India or Argentina. It's the creation of highly educated men who are nuclear scientists, who are army commanders, who are diplomats, who are prime ministers, presidents of countries, and so on. They are creating the war. They are responsible for, out of their ignorance. So what is ignorance? And there Krishna says in Education and Significance of Life, his first book, the ignorant man is not the one who is unlearned. That means not the uneducated one, but the one who does not know himself. And the learned man is stupid when he relies on his knowledge to give him understanding. This understanding is wisdom. It's a long vision, not a short, immediate vision. So if we are imparting knowledge, we are also the responsible to help the child to grow into wisdom. Krishna called it the flowering of goodness in the human being. It may seem a tall order, but he wanted to redesign education to enable that. So I have brought with me a PowerPoint which I have made based on his teachings. It's not precisely what he said, but it's based on his teaching and the values that emerge from it. But the systematization of it and the presentation of it is done by me. So if I may share the screen with you. Is it readable by you on the screen, Jonathan?
Yes, I can see it.
No, I mean, the letters are clear. I mean, you are able to
Yeah,
read it clearly.
it looks like about 12 or 18 size font, so it's good. I think most people can see it.
Okay. So it says the problem is not due to a lack of education, but the kind of education we are imparting. It has been caused by highly educated MScs, LLBs, PhDs, not by the uneducated man. Present day education is no barrier to barbarity. The Holocaust was perpetrated by highly educated people. When we impart knowledge, we must also impart the wisdom or the outlook to employ it rightly with responsibility. Here is a letter written by a survivor of the Holocaust in 1972, Haim Ginot. He wrote, it's entitled Teacher and Child. Dear teacher, I am a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no man should witness. Gas chambers built by learned engineers, children poisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, women and children shot and burnt by high school and college graduates. So I am suspicious of education. My request is that teachers help students become human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing, arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more human. Very poignant letter. Here is what Krishnamurti says about education. He says education may have a different meaning altogether, not merely transferring what is printed on a page to your brain. Education may mean opening the doors of perception to the vast movement of life. It may mean learning how to live happily, freely, not in hate and confusion, but in beatitude. Modern education is blinding us. We learn to fight each other. Right education is surely letting the mind free from its conditioning. Perhaps then there can be love, which in its action will bring about true relationship between man and man. So he talked about right education in quite a different way from what is being imparted in most of our schools throughout the world. I made this slide because I'm a scientist. I like to make equations to show that the real source of the problem lies in the ego process. And the ego process is not a process of nature. It is a result of our own thinking. And identification with a fragment for personal benefit or personal security, benefit, both material benefit in the form of wealth or psychological benefit in the form of praise and reputation and name for oneself, and so on. So I made this chart where the first column are normal things which we all experience, which we all have capacity for, and see what they become when you approach egoistically. You add the ego to it. The ego being something which is not there in nature, but something we add by using that capacity to achieve some result for ourselves. So it says love, when it becomes egoistic, turns into attachment, possessiveness. Wish, when the ego gets attached to it, turns into desire and addiction. Power, which is the ability to do things, when the ego is attached to it, turns into domination, exploitation. Sexuality, which is part of nature, all of us have it. When it becomes egoistic, it turns into lust, pornography, and rape. Friendship, which is such a natural thing between people, when it becomes egoistic, turns into support, dependence on each other, and desire for agreement and so on. Humility, when it becomes egoistic, turns into inferiority, servility, I'm nobody kind of thing. Talent, which is a very good thing, the ability to function efficiently in any field. When you add ego to it, turns into pride, vanity, superiority. Excellence, which is something one must demand of oneself. When it becomes combined with the ego, it turns into competition and rivalry. Groups, which is essential for doing things because you have to work cooperatively with other people to achieve anything. You can't achieve much singly. So the school is a group, the hospital is a group, and so on. When you attach the ego to it, it creates division, nationalism. The ego coming out of identification with your own group. Thinking, thought, add the ego to it, turns into worry, fear, and anxiety. Pleasure, such a natural thing. You eat food, you get pleasure. You go for a walk, you get pleasure. You meet a friend, you get a pleasure. Add the ego to it, and it turns into habit, addiction, and boredom. Need, we all have needs. Add the ego to it, and it turns into greed and covetousness. So the problem is not with the first column, but the problem is with the ego. And therefore, in education, it is important not to promote the ego in the child. And that was an essential part of Krishnamurti's approach to education, that the child must feel completely secure in the environment in the school. Because if he is insecure, if he feels threatened, then this ego process builds up, because the ego is our defense. We defend ourselves. That's why ego appears to us to be a friend, but actually it creates all the disorder in all our relationships and also in the world, in society. So it's important that that be an aim, that our students are not turning out to be egoistic, efficient workers, but they have, when the ego is not there, if you don't approach life egoistically, then love and compassion have a chance to flower in consciousness. There is an interesting dialogue I read between Krishnamurti and Scott Forbes, when he was handing over charge of Brockwood to Scott Forbes. He says to him, is Scott aware that the seed of intelligence is there in him? By intelligence, Krishnaji meant wisdom. That the seed of intelligence is there in him. He has nothing to do with it. It takes its own course, but he can kill it. So it's our responsibility not to kill that seed in our consciousness. And it is killed by this ego process. And it destroys sensitivity if you are egoistic. You don't feel for other people. You feel only for your own people and your own persona. So that is an important requirement in education. And so I have tried to write elements of a new vision for education, which is based on Krishnamurti's teaching. It may seem a tall order. The vision is not an ideal to be achieved. You will never achieve it. But a vision gives you the direction in which you need to go. And the direction tells you in what direction to take the next step. For instance, when India became free, Gandhi gave a direction to the Prime Minister, Nehru. He said, whenever you have a doubt what decision to take, consider whether it will help the poorest man on the road, and take the decision that will help him. Now, that may be an ideal to achieve, but it gives you the direction. What is the next step I have to take? It's like the pole star. You don't reach the pole star, but the pole star gives you the direction in which to move. So this vision of education is not an ideal to be achieved. You may not be able to achieve it. But if you ruminate over it, consider it seriously, it will direct your actions and your decisions in the direction of this vision. So I have put one, create a global mind, not a nationalistic mind, one that feels that the whole world is one and we are part of one humanity. Emphasize human development, not economic development. At present, all education is set up with the idea of the economy of the country. And it operates like a huge factory in which the child is treated as raw material entering the factory at the age of 6. And then it is fashioned in such a way, the child is fashioned in such a way that you have a computer scientist, a doctor, an engineer, a carpenter, and so on, coming out, who will perform the work that needs to be performed in society and produce things which will bring prosperity to the country. So the emphasis is all economic. Government starts those courses which will make the economy stronger, increase the production, the GNP. And Krishna said, value goodness above efficiency. The flowering of goodness in human consciousness is more important than economic progress. Even the most economically progressed countries have enormous amounts of violence and division and divorce and so on. People are not able to work together. So it doesn't really improve the quality of life. We think that having a lot of money improves the quality of life, but the quality of life is not just the physical life, but also the emotional life of the people and the spiritual life of the people. So the third element is encourage inquiry, not conformity. That means there must be respect for dissent, which is part of democracy. So not to make people conform, but to help them to inquire into whatever they are listening to. They need not accept it. If you recall, in every talk, Krishnamurti emphasizes, sir, don't accept what I say. Investigate it to find out if it is true. It has value only if it is true. It has no value if it is not true. Then you can throw it out. Why does he say that? Because he has deeply realized that the answer to a question does not lie outside the question. It lies within the question. You must investigate that question. And he pointed out how to investigate by paying attention to your own consciousness, the processes that are going on within to produce that negative emotion within you. You may differ from society. So no conformity. Conformity is just imitation. It's not wisdom. Cultivate cooperation, not competition. Competition builds the ego. It tells you that your fellow student, tells the child that your fellow student is not your brother or your friend, but your rival, that you have to do better than him, faster than him, and so on. It produces all jealousy and feeds the ego of the child. So teamwork is more important than individual achievement. At present, the emphasis is on individual achievement. We make heroes of someone who can jump 0.5 millimeter more than all the other people in the world. It's more important to be able to work cooperatively than to achieve efficiency in your own profession. But democracy is more important than domination. Not dominate with your view, but have dialogue. Dialogue is a democratic process with others and work together. The learning mind is more important than an acquisitive mind. At present, we are creating an acquisitive mind which gathers more and more information, more and more knowledge. The learning mind is discerning what is true and what is false, what it should accept and what it should not accept. So the emphasis should not be on memorizing, but on the awakening of intelligence, even in academics, and of course also in life. There is a small poem which emphasizes this difference between knowledge and wisdom. It says, knowledge and wisdom, far from being one, oftentimes have no connection. Knowledge dwells in minds replete with the thoughts of others. Wisdom in those attentive to their own. Knowledge is proud that it knows so much. Wisdom is humble that it knows no more. Create a mind that is both scientific and religious at the same time. This is only possible if you don't confuse religion to be belief. Religion is this quest for truth about consciousness. And science is a quest for truth about the way nature functions around us in the world. Both are a quest for truth, and there is no need to divide one or specialize in one or the other. But unfortunately, because the whole world regards religion as belief, and science will not accept belief, there has come about this great divide between science and religion, which is unfortunate. So we give a lot of emphasis on creating a scientific mind, which is then used for scientific progress in the world. But we don't emphasize the need for coming upon a religious mind, which is the mind in quest for truth through self-knowledge. So Krishnamurti said, you need both knowledge and self-knowledge at the same time. There must be excellence in both these. And they are not antagonistic to each other. So long as you understand that both are quests for truth, one about the external world around us and the other about the inner world of our consciousness. So understanding the world as well as understanding ourselves. Being rational and at the same time compassionate. Respect for all life is part of the religious mind, which means sensitivity. You care for all life, not only for your species. Being a friend to nature, not the master of nature. At present, all the ecological catastrophes that we are finding mentioned in every magazine and every newspaper throughout the world are the result of treating nature as a resource for economic development, exploiting nature. We are part of nature. And until a few hundred years ago, perhaps 200 years ago, human beings lived as part of nature, in harmony with nature, because they didn't have the power to destroy nature. But with the development of science and technology, we have acquired enormous power. We can now decimate forests, countries, rivers. So all pollution, everything coming from that kind of approach where you are only caring about economic growth and not about nature. So we need to be aware of the limitations of knowledge while engaging in knowledge. Then Krishnamurti talked about the art of living. Ultimately, the purpose of education should be to help the child come upon a high quality of life. Now, high quality of life is there only when there is a high quality in the physical, the intellectual, the emotional, and the spiritual aspect of life. So all of that becomes the concern of education. At present, we consider quality of life, we measure it as GNP, and people decide which country to go and live in on the basis of per capita income. But does money really contribute to the quality of life? To some extent, yes. You can buy a few things with money of high quality. But there are many things, peace of mind, joy, happiness, which don't come from money. You can't buy that. So you have to have a balance between the two. And that requires wisdom. That requires the understanding. What is the right place of money in my life? Nobody has asked this question of students and never given them that. It's important. So the art of living is to put everything in its right place. Because when you put everything in its right place, it creates beauty. And a beautiful life can only be lived when everything has been put in the right place. That is an important part of self-knowledge. The understanding of our relationship with desire, with sexuality, with friends, with nature, everything. So that part of learning also should be the concern of education, which will bring about flowering in goodness. Flowering in goodness, you can't decide to flower in goodness. It has to happen naturally. And it happens only when the ego is either mild or absent. The ego being an approach which gives importance only to first person singular, to the me and the mind. Working with joy rather than working for rewards. The perception of beauty rather than the pursuit of pleasure. The pursuit of pleasure is there because we are bored, and we are bored because we have not learned to be sensitive to the beauty in life. There is tremendous beauty in every aspect of life. There is beauty in art, in music, in nature, in mathematics and science. There is beauty in sports and games, in yoga. Now, that to be able to perceive that beauty is sensitivity. But sensitivity cannot be taught like a course intellectually. It comes about through contact. So if you listen to good classical music for many hours, you will see the beauty in that classical music. But you can't teach the beauty of classical music without bringing into contact. So that becomes a concern in education, to help the child come upon sensitivity and the perception of beauty in every aspect of life, which means sensitivity is more important than ambition. Education right now throughout the world emphasizes ambition, achievement. And Krishnaji is saying, no, not achievement, but the perception of joy in every aspect of life. There is great joy in friendship. There is joy in sports and games. There is joy in doing science and mathematics. There is joy in art and music. There's a lot of joy in every aspect of life. You have to discover that joy by really coming upon it. And we have to help the child to come upon it, which means a holistic development of all the faculties and not over specialization. Right now, everybody is emphasizing specialization in education because that will lead to a job and a profession and success in the profession. Krishnamurti said success is mediocrity. Because who is the successful man who has accepted everything that society laid down before him and climbed every ladder to achieve success, which means he never questioned anything, and that's mediocrity. The greatest human beings are those who questioned, who went beyond their conditioning. The Buddha went beyond the conditioning of Hinduism, although he grew up as a Hindu. Christ went beyond Jewish religion and came upon something new. He didn't create Christianity, but the church created Christianity. So you have to distinguish between the two, between the established religion and what the teacher was. The teacher spoke from wisdom. So there is this saying, don't follow the wise man, pursue the wisdom that he had. Unfortunately, we ended up following individuals rather than following the wisdom. So that needs to be pointed out in education and corrected. Now, I have listed here the different Krishnamurti schools, 6 of them in India. Rishi Valley School being the first started by Krishnamurti in 1932. Rajghat, where I am located, Rajghat Basic School in Varanasi, which started in 1934. Both these are residential schools, and he wanted residential schools so that the child is with us 24 hours of the day, and we are virtually the parents of the child also. And we can really look at his physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual development. Otherwise, child comes to you in a day school for 5 or 6 hours and is taken up with all the time one subject after another, and then a half an hour of sports or something, and then he goes back home. So there is not enough time to interact with him to understand life together. The Valley School in Bangalore started in 1975. The school, which is a day school in Chennai, 1973. It started in the campus of the Theosophical Society, and recently, 2-3 years ago, it shifted to a campus of its own, also in the outskirts of Madras. The Sahyadri School near Pune in Western India started in 1995, and the latest residential school called Pathshala, which is in a rural area of Tamil Nadu called Vallipuram, started in 2012 by the principal or director named Gautama. In USA, the Oak Grove School, which is a day school, started in 1974. And in England, the Brockwood Park School, which is an international residential school in Hampshire in 1969. Now, these schools have not really achieved the vision, as I said, but they are all attempting to create the kind of education that we have just talked about. Actually, to realize it is not all that easy. I myself been principal for 16 years of a Krishnamurti school, so I know the difficulties that one faces. And the greatest difficulty is educating the educator. Because the educators are grown-up people. They have not grown up with this kind of education. They have grown up with the traditional education, which has fear, which has punishment, which has competition, which has rivalry, which emphasizes success, and so on. So he comes conditioned with all that. And you appoint him because he knows the subject to be taught. Now, how does he? You have to introduce him to Krishnamurti's vision. And to begin with, he just accepts it as a policy of this school. But it's not enough to have it as a policy. It has to be in your heart. And that's the difficulty. So I would say we are wanting to create the vision, and we are ourselves the problem in the vision, because we have not actually imbibed. You have to engage with Krishnamurti's teaching in order that it becomes part of you. There is a talk, I think, Bombay 1984, where Krishnaji emphasized, put your intellect in your heart. It has no value outside. Very strong statement. but don't resist it. Examine it. What it is saying. Without love and compassion, your intellect will go wrong. Love and compassion are things which belong to what we call the heart. Of course, it's all through the brain, but in nomenclature, we call that heart. Feelings are from the heart. So sensitivity belongs to the heart. And it's important to have excellence in the intellect as well as in the heart. So I'll end it here, and then maybe we can have discussion, because there are many, many things more that need to be said, but I don't think we must respect the limitation of time. Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 questions. And then also, if anyone has questions that come up before we end here, please add them to chat, to the meeting chat. And then also you can, if the question comes up after the meeting, you can send your question to tech@ojairetreat.com. And I added that to at the top of the meeting chat. If you have questions about the email address, just ask it in the chat. So, all right, I'm going to share my screen. One second.
You can just read out the question. I am able to hear you.
Okay. So the first one was from Ravi. I think it's more of a statement, and I'm not sure I understand it, but I'll just read it. Same mistake as Buddhist is being made in KFI as well. Many person may memorize K dot by dot and creating an aura of realism around them, deceiving others as well as themselves. So, do you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you for pointing out that is a danger one has to be aware of and not get trapped in. So you can, if you just repeat Krishnamurti, it's as useless as repeating the Buddha or repeating Jesus Christ, because that's not the awakening of intelligence. Nor can you create a new conditioning. You cannot condition a human being into goodness. Goodness comes from the flowering of the heart. So it requires deep understanding of what Krishnamurti is saying. And only a superficial knowledge of what Krishnamurti has said is no different from superficial knowledge of Buddhism or any other Christianity and so on. The superficiality is the problem. That's the illusion. When it's superficial, you are taking something to be true when it is not true. So the meaning we give to education in society is superficial. It's not real education. The meaning we give to God is superficial. Krishna has not denied God, but he has denied all our concepts of God. He has not denied the sacred, but he has denied all our concepts of the sacred. So it's our concepts, our conditioning, which needs to be questioned. And to come upon the true meaning of each of these words. I would, if you have not already gone into it before, I would suggest reading Letters to Schools. In that, he gives detailed meaning, true meaning of each word. What is really respect? What is integrity? What is cooperation? He goes into it. And it's quite different from what society normally considers it to be. So that's what it means that our mind is caught in illusion, and that illusion is ignorance, and ignorance is the cause of our sorrow. So we are the authors of our own sorrow. And the only way to get over it is to have self-knowledge. And that begins with not knowing. To know that you don't really know the truth is the beginning of this inquiry.
Okay. Next question comes from David Moody. Ego is evidently universal among humans. Therefore, how can we know that it is not part of human nature?
Because you can see how it originates. You can see that there is no ego in nature, neither in the river nor in the environment. There may be storms, there may be earthquakes which are damaging to us, but there is no intention in nature to damage us. So nature functions according to a certain order, which scientists are studying the laws that govern that order. But there is no intentionality. It is only human being who destroys intentionally. Even the tiger eating the goat is not really violence because he is not deciding to do that. That is his instinct, that is the food nature has provided for him, and he eats, but he doesn't hate goats. He doesn't make war against goats and kill all the goats and so on. That is a specialty of human beings. So obviously, we are also a product of nature. We also grow up the same way as all other life, starting from a single cell, which is fertilized, and then develops according to a genetic program. There is no genetic program that says that you must be egoistic. What biological evolution has given us is an enhanced capacity for memory, for imagination, for thinking, and the instinct for seeking pleasure and avoiding pain is already there. But nature has not prescribed for human beings how they should use these faculties. We have to learn the right use of these faculties. Unfortunately, we have used them to produce the ego by pursuing psychological pleasure, not only physical pleasure, but psychological pleasure and psychological pain, trying to, with feeling of insecurity and so on, trying to seek security. All that creates the ego. Now, if you go into it more deeply, watch how a child's ego develops. The human child is extremely dependent. It's unlike the young one of a dog or a cat or a cow, where the young one becomes independent in 6 months. The human child remains dependent on its parents for 20 years because there is this development of consciousness and knowledge and so on, which is not there in the case of the animal. So it naturally develops an attachment for its parents, for its home. It feels secure in its home, and so on. Question is, can we come out of that, or you remain permanently with the me and the mind, which is the ego? So the ego may have, to begin with, a natural development and even be required biologically for the protection of the child, because the child doesn't stick to its parents. It has no intelligence to handle itself on the road. It'll die. So there may be a place for the ego to begin with as a protection for the child. So he remains attached. The young one of a monkey and so on also clings to its mother. The same thing is true of the human child. But you have to wean yourself out of that. And that's what Krishnamurti is talking about. It's no use complaining about this ego process and then saying it is from nature. No. It is causing all this destruction, all the wars, all our breakdown in our relationships and so on. Therefore, the question before us is it inevitable, or can we free ourselves from it? Now, I'll give you an example. Sometimes an example illustrates it. When you play a game, you play according to the rules of the game, and maybe your opponent plays better than you, so he wins. Why does one feel miserable when that happens? You have to create this in education. You have to talk over with the child. It happens because we have given importance to winning. Who said that winning is important? Why is it not important to enjoy the game, which is the love of the game? What does it matter whether you lose or you win? When it's a hobby, you go for the beauty of it, the joy of it. You don't seek achievement. But when it is part of your profession or your life, yeah, you are ambitious in there. That is a propaganda in the mind that you have to win. Then you get the whole propaganda is built by the whole of society. I mean, look at the way the society treats the man who wins or plays cricket a little bit better or tennis a little bit better than others. It becomes a hero, and people worship him, and he earns lots of money, millions of dollars. So all that is infecting the child and telling him that it's important to be successful, to have more achievements and so on. It's not. If you are asking a wrong question when you ask who won the game, that's incidental. You should be asking, did they enjoy playing? Because the sport is meant to be enjoyed. Are you enjoying or are you competing? So this competition is something that we ourselves are promoting in society, and the child is caught in that. And he wants appreciation from the adult, and the adult gives him when he wins. So this whole thing needs to be changed. That's why Krishnamurti said it's a wholly different way of living. One of his books is called that, a wholly different way of living. That means you're no longer approaching life from the point of view of more and more gain and more profits for the me and the mine.
Okay, next question. Kanchan says, can Krishnamurti's vision for education be institutionalized? I feel like he said about truth or religion, which cannot be institutionalized through organized religions. We cannot have his vision for education flowering implemented in schools.
Maybe not in its entirety. There are limitations. Those limitations are because the school is part of society. It's not an independent unit. So in India, for example, the school has to affiliate to a board, which gives the degrees and takes the examination and so on. Because unless he takes that examination, he'll not get admission to a college. So that's a kind of boundary conditions that is imposed. And because the board is filled with human beings who have a lot of emphasis only on acquiring knowledge, therefore they make the courses extremely heavy. And the child is overburdened with studying those courses. All this needs to be questioned. Actually, in that subject, there is an infinite amount of knowledge. And what you will teach the child is only a small zero. What is the point of making a slightly bigger zero? But all the time is gone in giving more and more knowledge, increasing the size of the zero. It will still be zero compared to all the knowledge out there. It's more important to produce in him the ability to learn for himself, not only in self-knowledge, but even in academics, that he will be able to learn. For that, you need to deal with a few topics, but go into it in depth. You can't go into it in depth when you have an enormous course to be completed. Then it's like the teacher is in a race to complete the course, and so is the student. So two people running towards a certain aim, conversing with each other, that's what you call teaching. It's not teaching. The whole approach is wrong to it. But question is, you are located in society, and either you are able to give the education right up to MA, PhD, whatever, and they value the degrees given by the school, then you can do. But when you can't, when you after high school, you have to put them in society and into the other educational institutions like called colleges and universities, then that becomes a boundary condition within which you are operating. So that's one of the factors where you are not free to do as you would like to in a Krishnamurti school. You have to adjust to what the board says, and the board often is filled with people who have a traditional mind, who want only knowledge and expertise and economic progress and so on. They're not concerned about the values of a Krishnamurti school. So one is operating in a sense in a hostile atmosphere. Society is hostile to this. What they like is the fact that the children in the Krishnamurti school are happy. That has been achieved. In all the Krishnamurti schools, the children really are happy to be there. And that's a big contribution of the Krishnamurti school, that they have enabled an education where the child learns happily and not out with threats and harassment by the elders. That has been achieved, but that's only a small part. There is the entire vision of education, the global mind, the sensitivity and all that. Where is the time to do all that?
The next question is from Pradeep. The ongoing wars increase in number by authoritarian regimes show that human beings, society haven't changed. One feels helplessness and sad. I am asking JK's question, do you think, will humanity ever change?
Not unless they seriously engage in self-knowledge. They won't. This has been pointed out by the Buddha. It has been pointed out by Socrates. It has been not so clearly pointed out by Jesus Christ, but effectively, if you read Sermon on the Mount and so on, you can't do all that without coming upon self-knowledge, which is wisdom. So the fact that humanity has not cared for self-knowledge and gone in the direction of knowledge, expansion of knowledge, itself is an unwise step. I'm reminded of a poem by T.S. Eliot called The Rock. The last paragraph of it raises this question. It says, where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in our knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? In 2000 years, the cycles of heaven take us away from God and unto dust. Because 2000 years ago, there were people like Jesus Christ, the Buddha, Lao Tzu, Socrates, and so on, given a few hundred years plus minus. That means the main occupation of humanity was to come upon wisdom. Then came the era of expanding knowledge in every field, in art, in music, in science, and it's still going on. And the wisdom has disappeared. in that. We have lost the wisdom, we have expanded in knowledge. And now even knowledge is going away because nobody writes love letters like what Robert Browning wrote to Elizabeth Barrett, because you don't have the time. You are doing it on a cell phone, communicating with your girlfriend. And you write LUV instead of LOV because you're in a hurry to communicate. You can't produce beautiful literature in a hurry. So from knowledge, one has gone into the information age. And therefore, the poet says, in 2000 years, the cycles of fate, heaven or fate, take us away from God and unto dust. But we think we are progressing. So it's doubtful whether the fact that we consider that we are very intelligent, human beings are the most intelligent species on earth, it needs to be questioned. Are we really intelligent? Even biologically, intelligence meant survival. Are we going towards survival or we are going towards self-destruction? I leave it to you to answer that question. So obviously we are not intelligent. Krishnamurti says there is no intelligence without love and compassion. So he calls wisdom as intelligence. Without wisdom, there is no intelligence. It's just ability, which is power. And power without wisdom is destruction, which is what we are witnessing going on. And we have become, instead of the best species on earth, we have become the greatest parasites on earth. The amount of destruction that human beings have done, no other species has done, neither snakes, nor tigers, nor nothing. They haven't created war. They have not killed other species or their own species to the extent to which man has done. And we are the most intelligent. It's a big question mark, no? We have just defined intelligence unintelligently, is what I would say. So without self-knowledge, it goes wrong. It's our doing. We have not valued self-knowledge. We have been told so. 2000 years ago, 2000, you can't say it has not been pointed out to us. You and I have not valued it. We have valued money.
Okay, next question from Ritika. Hang on one second. What's your view on present education like NEP 2020 if related to Krishnamurti's philosophy is very difficult to practically possible or impossible?
Sir, this pursuit of the so-called practical is the problem. Everybody is saying war is practical, peace is not practical, therefore we are doing war. We'll create peace at the end of the war. And similarly, they are saying it's not practical to do all this, which Krishnamurti is pointing out, so we are giving this kind of education. Which means you are agreeing that only lopsided development of the human mind can be produced through education. And that's the kind of mind you have produced. And that is responsible for all the disorder in society. It's there in front of you. But you go on with your own song, saying we are the most intelligent, we are the most intelligent. That's just a propaganda for our own species. We are not the most intelligent. The ants and cockroaches are more intelligent. They work cooperatively. We are not able to work cooperatively. Not even the professors in a university are able to work cooperatively. And we are intelligent. You have defined intelligence only as ability. Intelligence is not ability. Intelligence is sensitivity. We have lost sensitivity.
Next
So
question.
who can be blamed for all this? Humanity itself. No, we have created war. Before us, there was no war. Nature's destruction was not there. For millions of years, nature has flourished. If we tomorrow decimate ourselves through nuclear war, nature will flourish. A big pest would be gone. This pest called human species.
Okay, the next question is from Hansa. How can human sensitivity increase towards peace?
Yes, that is a question which the Krishnamurti school engages in. You have to create activities for the children which will promote sensitivity. Now, if a child is made to plant a tree and look after that tree, it creates sensitivity. If the child is taken for walks in nature and made to observe nature, the sense of beauty of nature and wholeness of nature enters into the child. And that is the reason why all Krishnamurti schools are set in very beautiful natural surroundings. Not because it is pleasant, but because it is conducive to sensitivity and a religious quality in the mind. Then the way the teachers function in the school, if we are quarreling with each other, fighting with each other, jealous and so on, that's what the child learns. So we have to create a community which lives with these values. And we can create that by coming upon self-knowledge, engaging with these questions, learning for ourselves. You can't teach. You know, there's that famous saying that you may teach what you speak, but you educate what you are. So if I say things, very noble things, and I don't live that way, that's what I'm trying to teach the child. The child sees that when you speak, you must speak like that, but when you live, you must live like this, which means if I am a hypocrite, I teach hypocrisy to the child. And that's what is going on. There is casteism in India. Somebody started it 3,000 years ago. Nobody questions it. So it goes on and on and on from father to son. And it's dividing society, creating caste wars, discrimination, wrongdoing, but we are not able to come out of it because we live in imitation. You have to inculcate the spirit of inquiry, questioning, not blind conformity and acceptance of what your father is saying or what your grandfathers have said. But we are taught to be so proud of our culture that we don't question it, we propagate it, we defend it. That's called identification. You identify with your culture, and then it becomes my culture. And anything that's mine is glorified, protected, defended, promoted. That's the ego. And we haven't seen the problem of it. Everybody is doing that.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And Donna asked the last question here. Does Kay's education prepare these children since they're learning not to fit into society? In other words, a child who has other values might be harshly judged by others, as society may not understand why they have different views, different approaches.
Yeah, Krishnamurti is not about views. You don't have to accept Krishnamurti's views and propagate his views. It's about sensitivity. If the child is sensitive and he is taught to inquire for himself, stand up on his own legs, not simply conform blindly, accept everything blindly. He'll learn. He will learn, he will grow. You cannot ensure the learning. Different children will be different. Somebody will succumb and follow his parents because there are pressures on him. Somebody else will come out of it. Somebody may not be able to come out of it, but he'll educate his children differently, bring up his children differently. So social change is a gradual process. The perception of truth is not a gradual process. Either you have perceived the truth or you have not perceived the truth. There is no that you have perceived it halfway and then 3/4 way and then you will be at the top of the hill. Not like that. So it doesn't matter. Wisdom comes from the perception of the truth. But social change is a gradual process. Krishna knew that very well. But he said some people must work towards transformation of consciousness. He knew that everybody will not work for this. The masses don't work for this. So you have the option. You want to be part of the masses, then live with the masses. Or you are interested in this, then it is true that you will be a little outside society. Or society will be critical of you because you will not conform to them. Gandhi didn't conform to society, so society killed him. Jesus Christ didn't conform to society, so society killed him. Krishnaji was fortunate that they didn't kill him. But what is society? Society, you and I, we create society. So when one is blaming society, one is indirectly blaming oneself. I think with that, I'll end it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there was only one question that didn't get answered, and Rohit, if you want your question answered, you can send it to tech@ojairetreat.com. So thanks, everyone. You'll receive a recording of an email with a recording of the talk, and then also you'll get a basically the time and information about the time of the talk for next week. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank
Bye
you.
now. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.